Lubbock, Texas, home of the likes of Buddy Holly, Mac Davis, and Texas Tech University. An unremarkable place with the uncanny ability to produce remarkable people and ideas. And now it's a hub of the newest, oldest wave in fashion, known as vintage clothing. What is it? How did it end up in Lubbock? And why do people do it? In short, it's all for the love of the game. Our journey to get to the bottom of the vintage clothing phenomenon started with a pop-up at CASP, one of many hosted here in Lubbock. Vendors from all across Lubbock meet up in one location, set up their pieces, and bring in hundreds of customers throughout the day. There's a lot of competitive shopping between the customers and the vendors. No one is immune to the allure of what they might find. Everyone's looking for their favorite athlete, brand of motorcycle, or cartoon character printed on a shirt or hat. But for the vendors, this is a very important opportunity to showcase almost everything in their inventory, network with regular and new customers, and maybe make the one sale that could catapult their shop from an online store into a brick-and-mortar storefront.
My name is Israel. I'm with Izzy Vintage. I started in about June 2021, so I'm about like a year and a month in. I've probably done around a span of like 20 pop-ups by now. This is my second one at CASP Block Party. They do a retro market most of the time, and that's when they have most of the vendors there. Last time was really good. It was a really good turnout. They had like 3 vintage vendors. This time around they have 6 of them. Tupac shirt I won in a raffle, but it was a free raffle with like 300 people in it, and this shirt is like ranges anywhere from like $500 to $1,000. So I was hoping that I could maybe sell it today. If not, then I'm trying to post it on eBay and Grailed and try to get it off over there.
But I just wanted to start something new. My name's Sarah Alegria, and I'm selling vintage clothes. I'm trying to just get my name out there. Long term, I hope to open like a big store one day. Maybe move to like Dallas, Houston, have a couple stores there.
Owning a store and establishing a physical presence in Lubbock is a goal most vintage vendors are still working towards. However, one vendor named Dakota from our House of Thrift is close to hitting that milestone and was willing to tell us her story and her take on the vintage community.
I'm Dakota, and I own our House of Thrift. I'm from Lubbock, Texas, born and raised. I went to Lubbock High School. On the side, I thrifted constantly. I think I just enjoyed it too much to stop. Teaching people what we do and being able to educate somebody on the things that we do here and why we do it is really cool too, because I don't think enough people understand why we're doing this. But I think the more we educate people, the more they'll love it, just like we do. I want to say it started when I was thrifting with Kevin, and I was just digging through bins next to Kevin, not knowing that he owned All Luck Vintage. And so it was just boggling to think that I was thrifting with him. But eventually he was like, you should follow my shop. And then that led to finding Izzy for Izzy Vintage. And then I realized that the community is huge. I mean, I knew more people like me had to have been out there, but to see the community be that big was really cool. If you were to go to Austin or Dallas, you just wouldn't have the same homey feel from the people here. I think Lubbock definitely we're a lot nicer, if you will, and we want to be as involved with more people in Lubbock as possible. So I will definitely say the people is gonna be a lot more unique compared to other cities. But I definitely think that some other people have greed to it, and it's, they don't help the rest of us as we would help them in a way. And I think they use some of their items as a greed type thing as well. But again, it just depends on the person. Mine's passion, and I know Kevin and Izzy is passion for sure. I mean, you could just see it in the way that they do this, it's passion. I definitely think that if you're slacking in the relationship part of your shop or even at pop-ups and things like that, that definitely needs to be added or re-umped, if you will. I think that the relationships are really important in what we do. and being a part of the community is really important in what we do. I don't think that I would be where I'm at if I didn't have the Lubbock community backing me up. I think that, you know, once you have something good, don't stop, keep going. Because once you cut all of that off, you know, you're not gonna make it any further than that. And if you just keep grinding and keep doing it every day, I think that it'll be a lot more rewarding. But definitely just don't stop, just do it. That's all you can do.
Up-and-coming vintage vendor JT from Xceeded Vintage also agreed to talk with us about his experience here in Lubbock, his ambitions with vintage, and where he plans to expand now that he has a physical location to sell from. Vintage is more than an unconventional way to make money to many vendors. In JT's case, his love for finding vintage clothes is pushing him to expand his reach outside the bounds of Lubbock.
He's like, it's really easy, you should give it a try. And so I did it, and now here I am. My name is JT, Joshua Troy Snow. I'm from Lubbock, Texas. Born here, raised here. I started about roughly 5 months ago, and I built up ever since then. I've had several pop-ups with Next Gen. My girlfriend went to tech, and I had met a guy through one of her friends, and previously I was already buying vintage clothes, so when I met him, he was selling them, which I started buying off of him a lot. And then eventually we sat down and talked, and I asked him how he did it, and he explained to me, and I was like, that's really cool. And he's like, it's really easy. He's like, you should start doing it. So he's like, you should give it a try. I'm doing a lot more in person right now, but I want to be able to more online, because I can spread my stuff out throughout the world from there. I want it to where I start buying from people who are out of state or somewhere else in the state. So I just meet a lot of new people and see a lot of new faces all the time. It's very competitive, but with the people around you, it makes it fun. You want to compete with them and go against them, and so yeah. I was with Kevin. We were getting clothes, and it was just me and him that day, and so we were going at it, just running to stuff and trying to do the best, and we even made a little bet who could get the most stuff that day, and of course Kevin ended up winning. But it was really fun to do that with him and just us two. I think it's just because it's not as other people that do it are usually in big cities. It's hard to come around, but here in Lubbock, it's a good area to do it, and you know everybody really. Everybody knows each other. It's kind of like a small town with the vintage community, and so it's really good to interact and meet, even make friends with it.
Although Lubbock isn't the only place in Texas where vintage clothing is sold, TopShelf Vintage co-owners Marcus and Josiah both agree that the Lubbock vintage scene certainly has its own unique brand of community and connection.
My name is Marcus Monroe, and I'm here with TopShelf, and we're here just to spread our love through the clothes.
My name is Josiah Silva, and I'm part of TopShelf. I started early around September last year, so yeah, it's been just roughly under a year.
We've been doing this. I've been doing this with Josiah for about 4 months now, and we just did a couple of events. We're on I like to call this a bender. This is our third event in about less than a week, and we just came from Dallas and we came from Odessa, and now we're in Lubbock. Honestly, if we're being honest, I got into vintage kind of whenever I was going broke, and I went to a Goodwill with a friend, and she found this nice jacket for $5. I'm like, all right, well, I'm gonna start coming to Goodwill now. So I started going to Goodwill, and then I used to live in Austin, so I went to this pop-up they had on this Sunday, and they had a whole bunch of good clothing for $5 or less. And then I was just thinking to myself, I can really do this.
I started off by really wanting to change my style and change everything about me, really. And once I started getting into vintage, I started to figure out that I could find certain pieces that I could put together just to express how I want to, how I feel, you could say.
So, I was thinking about opening up my store before I ran into Josiah. And then, just the stars, aligned, and then me and him came together and just put our two stores together. I knew that he had a lot of good clothes, but he was sitting on them, and he didn't really know how to get his name out. And then, he was the scenes are totally different to me from West Texas and then the Austin area. So I kind of knew how to work around social media, and he didn't. So I knew with my marketing and strategies and skills that I could bring his vision to life, and also mine too. because we both wanted the same thing and from the same place. And then, I mean, me and Josiah has been friends since we've been growing up. We grew up together, so we knew of each other. And I mean, I trusted him and he trusted me, so we just wanted to do it together.
To me, this is like a vacation to me. I get to travel, get to do whatever I want, and make money while doing it, but I really just am feeling the traveling and stuff like that. So I guess I'm really investing in myself and while doing this. So if I can invest in myself by investing in people to make them happy, then so be it. That's all I want to do.
What we want to do with our brand is have people, like a safe place for people to express themselves through their clothes also, because people express themselves through music, through writing. Why not express yourself through clothes? And that's what we want to send the message to. I think vintage means, for someone to buy vintage clothing is, to me, buying a piece of who they are. They want to find clothes that like mean something to them.
It's all about reaction. If they come in there and they're like, man, I love this shirt, then they tell me a story about it. I'm like, dude, I have to give you a deal on it because it means that much to you. And so it's like, if I can find something that someone really loves, then it helps me enjoy it even more. It makes it worth it, I guess you could say. It really just means making old new, or making a part of our past, or a part of our family's past, our parents' past. So it's like, anytime I can find a piece that reminds me of them, then I'll even wear it myself just because it reminds me of them. So it's like a part of their history too, or part of their culture.
Yeah, we want to really bring people together through clothes, through recycling the clothes, because through recycling the clothes, that will like ultimately make the world a better living place. You know, you don't have to mass produce clothes all the time, because if you think about it, there's more clothes on this earth than there is humans. So why are we making more clothes? Why don't we just recycle them? I mean, I'm wearing, all this is recycled clothes right now, and I don't think it looks too bad. So even my rings, I got this from an estate sale, and this doesn't even work. You know what I'm saying? It's like, but it doesn't really matter because it's a part of me. Like, I love going to estate sales. I mean, I love rings, and I got all this stuff basically for free.
Yeah, I mean, the people are nice. I think I haven't really met a bad person. I mean, there's some few bad apples in the vintage community, but that's just because they're in it for money. I think whenever the business owner is rooted from just showing love and showing love to each vendor and being able to help each other out, we've been surrounded by a bunch of those and been blessed with and fortunate enough to be around a lot of those nicer vendors and a lot of those people who really just get it.
Our main goal is to ultimately be like in malls and have multiple businesses all over, and we want to become like a brand. Like we're about to start making our own merch, and all of our merchandise is going to become straight from recycled clothing. We just want to really just like be our own brand. In terms of the vintage, we want to start our own brand and expand that way, but we always want to be a part of vintage because it's really a part of us and the way we love to dress. And plus, who wants to go wear something or buy something at a Nike outlet that everyone has or everyone's gonna wear? I would love to come in here and find a particular piece that fits me.
There are two components to the vintage community, the clothes and the people. While no two articles of clothing have quite the same backstory, no two vendors have quite the same motivation for selling vintage clothes. Some see it as an alternative means of profit, while other vendors are purely passionate about the art of thrifting. However, Allie from the Forgotten Youth noticed a striking parallel between thrifted clothes and children who are up for adoption, and has used vintage clothing as a conduit to spread awareness about the foster home crisis in Texas.
So my name is Alicia Borman. I also go by Allie for namesake. My store is called TFY Apparel. So TFY stands for The Forgotten You. I started it as kind of like a small gig. Growing up, you know, even in high school, I would just go to the thrift stores and find cool stuff, and then I found that I'd sell them on Facebook Marketplace and people would actually buy it, you know, for more than what you're finding it for. And growing up in the foster system, you learn how to hustle and bustle pretty quickly, so that kind of got me started on selling vintage. But my root came from way, way back when I was a little girl in Oklahoma. And I was in the foster system, and we were only allowed to have 3 shirts and 2 pairs of pants. And whenever we grew out of these, we would be taken to thrift stores, you know. So all of our clothes were new to us, but not truly new. And I always tell everybody I resonated so much with the clothes because as I walked through the aisles of the thrift stores, I felt that not only did we, you know, were we alike in many ways, but those clothes had once been cared for and now they were forgotten, much like us as foster children. And so I resonated with it. And you know, as they hung there, they were just longing for a new home, longing for someone to give them purpose and to give them a new beginning. And I feel like that's us as foster kids. You know, we're literally just hanging out in these foster homes, waiting for someone to come choose us, love us, and give us new purpose. I remember that every single situation and every single instance of like trauma that I was put in, I have kind of always been an optimist, and so I did have that quality and that trait as a young child. But every time I went through some trauma, I would like find a way to utilize it, right? So while I was growing up in the system, and like I said, with the bullying, with the clothes, I found a way to utilize that bullying to bring about an idea and create a better future for yourself. And so that's kind of been a work in progress, and I showcase that with my vintage, right? Like my clothing, with vintage clothing, it was my foundation. You know, I was only provided like thrifted clothes, and that in itself, now that I've blossomed it into a business that supports me and that I'm growing, and you know, it's a whole foundation for an entrepreneurial spirit. It's like taking, you know, what may have broke you in the past and utilizing it for your future. Vintage means a lot to me. I think that it's a way for me to not only connect with the past, right? Like this is literally our history. Like, and it's crazy because everything comes back around. I work in the fashion markets now for a company called She and Sky, and everything that you're seeing, like a lot of the materials and even the patterns or the shoulder pads, it's all coming back, and it all comes back around, right? And that just kind of reinforces my idea of sustainable clothing. Like these clothes were once worn, were once the fad, once the style, then someone threw them away and was like, oh, you know, I need to keep up to date, or, you know, someone passes away and everything gets donated, whatever happens. And now that style is back, and it's like the big thing. Everybody wants it. I mean, when people see my clothes, the vintage clothes, they're like, where do you get this? And it's like, this is our history, this is our past. You know, there's such a deep connection. And like I said before, the quality of the clothes, you know, the way that we used to make it before fast fashion and before we started to pollute the earth uncontrollably was just so much better. And so there's just so many things wrapped into it, economically feasible, but also like socially, it should, people, I mean, you're literally able to not only add to history, but you're wearing history. Like I'm walking around in someone else's shoes right now, you know, and so it's just, they're so beautiful to me, and there's so much more to them than just clothes. Clothing in general had a big impact on me. You know, it was another trauma point whenever we were going to school, and it was just really hard because we were only wearing that same clothes all the time. And so that was like a big trigger point for me, and it kind of boosted my passion for fashion because I got all the girls together and I literally had everyone throw their clothes into a pile and was like, cool, let's make this happen. And I mix and match, and I made sure everyone kind of, it looked and gave the illusion as if we didn't have only 3 shirts and 2 pairs of pants. And so that kind of was my jump start and my boost. And because I was sent, you know, we were taken to those, the vintage clothing stores and the thrift stores, and that's my foundation. I'm able to use that and then showcase why I am where I am now, why it's so important to me. I want to be able to host volunteer events where we not only like obviously have the vintage clothing out, but we invite people from the community to come, as well as some foster kids to be able to come and engage, right? I want firsthand experience. I just want to be able to use TFY as the building blocks. So vintage is huge for this, right? Because not only is vintage something that's like near and dear to my heart, sparked my passion, but it's sustainable clothing, right? I am huge on teaching our youth of tomorrow, like literally our leaders of tomorrow, the right way, right? Because right now with fast fashion and everything going on, I think people get caught up in how like easy and quick and like how they can buy this and oh, it's cheap and oh this, but they leave out the necessary, you know, items like, where is this being made? How is this being made? How is it affecting the environment? And so with vintage clothing, I'm able to not only showcase how like these pieces are so valuable. They are still in working condition. Like these things are beautiful. Most of them are made better quality than the clothes that we have today, longer lasting. And again, promoting that sustainability, right? And showcasing to the foster kids, you know, not only how to find, you know, manage their finances and come and work and kind of do that, but also showcasing the other side of it, how vintage clothing itself is just, I mean, to me, it's the future. Like, I think that especially being able to refurbish or using our imaginations to take what's old and bring it to light, right? Like, I'm sure this jacket was someone's grandma's jacket years and years and years ago, but I promise you I don't make, I make it look spunky and new again. And so we're just bringing it back to life. And that's kind of what I want to push with the vintage clothing is just like foster kids, same thing with the vintage clothing. It's just looking for a new home. It does not need to be thrown away because it's so valuable. By the end of the year, that's my goal, is to have everything photographed, packaged, and ready to ship. Then to be able to expand, the more people I reach. With every package, I plan to, not only put in there a story of a foster child I'm mentoring, right? If they're willing to give me, that information, but I want to put in their statistics and facts about wherever they're ordering from the specific state, what's happening in their state. That way, if they don't have that knowledge, then they can be like, oh, this is happening. Just spreading the awareness, right? Because the only way to start a movement or just to make any kind of change is to provide information. But also I've seen it as as a new venture that I can take on. It's not just, a hobby anymore, but it grew from, like I told you, I had that 2-bedroom, house, and the main bedroom or the master bedroom was my closet, and that was just my thrifted clothing. And as I grew, I realized that this is something I could take and actually begin an actual, business venture that could profit, and I could do something I loved and make money. So I always tell everybody my goal is to make an impact while making an income, and TFY lets me do that.
Throughout its 4-year rise in Lubbock, the impact of vintage is unquestionable. Even throughout the time frame of this documentary, many of the vendors we interviewed hit special milestones in their career path. Izzy from Izzy Money Vintage was able to sell a Tupac t-shirt. Dakota from our House of Thrift recently purchased a classic RV that she is renovating in hopes that she will be able to sell vintage clothing on the road across America. Josiah and Marcus from TopShelf Vintage have purchased a storefront in Colorado City, Texas to sell vintage clothing from. And Allie from The Forgotten Youth plans on releasing her new book documenting her time as a foster and how she plans for vintage clothing to shape the foster home crisis in Texas for the better. Although still considered an underground movement, every day the influence of vintage clothing grows. Eventually, it may very well hit the point of well-known notoriety. Already, Texas Tech students that come from all across America serve as the largest demographic for buying vintage clothes in Lubbock. As the vintage movement spreads, Lubbock might be known as the point of origin for the next newest, oldest wave of fashion. But the vintage community in Lubbock deserves to be notorious for more than its clothing. It was a pleasure to work with, meet, and become friends with many of the vendors we interviewed, and even some vintage vendors who were not able to participate in the documentary. The community was nothing less than welcoming. In fact, everyone was more than willing to share the secrets of the trade with us. Despite the limited supply of vintage clothing in Lubbock, many vendors encourage growth in the community, even if it means more staunch competition. Although it makes business more competitive, vendors don't stifle the growth of the vintage community in order to hold a monopoly on the market. Instead, they foster its growth, instilling their passion for vintage clothing in others, and even going as far as to help start up new and up-and-coming vintage businesses. In their eyes, anyone who has a passion for vintage clothing can make an impact by selling vintage, and they are more than willing to help those who are interested in joining their community start up their own business. Although vintage is used as an alternative form of income, for many, it's more than just a way to make money. For most vendors, the driving source of their business is passion, and they do it all for the love of the game.